Hey, Dr. Fernandez, this is John Andrew Blank. This is my read aloud for our ADMG 330 class. The book I chose to read is Pink and Say. This book is an interesting story about two Civil War soldiers, one African American and one white soldier, who come in each other's cross paths during the Civil War after a battle. And it's just kind of a heartwarming story about how our soldiers help each other and uh, how the story turns out. Is kind of interesting as far as the how the I guess the end result for one soldier compared to the other soldier. This book is written and illustrated by Patricia Polacco, and a couple of interesting things about the author is that she didn't learn to read until she was 14. She was having to be dyslexic, and she got to be 14 before anybody really diagnosed this, and one of her teachers in school actually diagnosed her disability. And I thought that was kind of just a reminder for us as teachers that even in the middle grades that we'll have to be on the lookout for these different disabilities that our students may have. Also, she was like 40 or 41 years old before she actually wrote her first children's book. So that's kind of interesting, I think, too. I'll go ahead and read this book, and the introduction of it tells a little bit about how this story was written. When Sheldon Russell Curtis told this story to his daughter Rosa, she kept every word in her heart and was to retell it many times over her long lifetime. Sheldon had been injured in a fierce battle and was left for dead on a muddy, blood-soaked pasture somewhere in Georgia. He was a mere lad of 15. He lay there for 2 days by his reckoning, only to slip into unconsciousness and fever. He was rescued from this field by another lad who had also been separated from his company. I will tell this in his own words as nearly as I can. I watched the sun edge toward the center of the sky above me. I was hurt real bad. For almost a year I've been in this man's war, the war between the states. Being just a lad, I was wishing I was home. My leg burned and was angry from the lead ball that was lodged in it just above my knee. I felt sleepy and everything would go black. Then I'd wake up again. I wanted to go back to our farm in Ohio, and sometimes, when I'd fall into one of them strange sleeps, I'd be there with my ma, tasting bacon powdered biscuits fresh out of her wood stove. Then I heard a voice. For a moment I thought I was fever dreaming, but then I felt strong hands touch my brow, splash water in my face. Being here, boy, means you gotta be dead, the voice said as he gave me a drink from his kit. Where you hit? Because if it's a belly hit, I gotta leave you here, he said. I've never seen a man like him so close before. His skin was like the color of polished mahogany. He was flying Union colors like me. His age, my age maybe. His voice was soothing and his help was good. Hitting the leg, I told him. Not bad if it don't go green. Can you put weight on it? He asked as he pulled me to my feet. We got to keep moving. If we stay in one spot, marauders will find us. They're riding drag and are looking for wounded. Next thing I remember was collapsing in a heap on the ground and rocking with the pain in my leg. Everything started to go black. Then I remember him pulling me back on his back. I heard him say, Lord have mercy, child. You're as bad off as I am. I'll tote you. I can't rightly leave you here. I remember being pulled and carried and stumbling. I remember hard branches snapping back in my face and mouths full of dirt as we hit the ground to keep from being seen. I remember slogging through streams, hauling up bluffs, and belly crawling through dry fields. I remember these things in a half-sleep like, but I do remember being carried for a powerfully long way. Here's one of the interesting pictures of, it's kind of hard to see on there. Then the fever must have took me good because I could feel a cool, sweet-smelling quilt next to my face. Soft, gentle hands were stroking my head with a cool, wet rag cloth. Look at that morning that's a coming, a woman's voice said as she spooned oat porridge into me. Does your mama know what a beautiful baby boy she has? Where am I? Is this heaven? I asked. She tossed her head back and laughed. No, child, Pincus brung you home to me. Don't you remember? The mahogany child, I thought. Both you children have been on the run for days, and a miracle of God Almighty brung you both here. Yes, indeed, child, a miracle. I remember thinking, could this war have been so close to this lad's home? I couldn't imagine having a war right in his backyard. I looked over and saw him looking out the window light. Guess you don't remember much, he said. I'm Pincus Aloud, fought with the 48th Colored. Found you after I got lost from my company. My name is Sheldon. Sheldon Curtis, I said weakly. This is my mother, sweet Momo Bay, he said as she smiled at me. Lord, Lord, I never thought I'd see my dear boy again, she said as she hugged him. I've been getting along, though, Pincus. Warm things got left in the big house when the family left. Dry goods, too. The rest I've been getting from the woods. There's a freshwater spring. Still have some chickens, even got an old cow out back that still gives. Then have you been all alone here?" Pincus asked his mother. "Where is everybody?" "Her daddy run off to fight a month ago. All the hands and their children run off out of harm's way, but I stayed. I prayed to the Lord every day. My prayers were surely answered because He brought my baby back here to stay," she said as her face beamed. "You ain't never going to leave your mama again, are you, child?" she said softly. Pincus looked troubled and didn't answer. "I'm going down to the stream and pound these clothes of yours," she says, ready to leave us. "If you hear marauders coming, get to the roof cellar door. Stay down there till they're gone." "That's what I've been doing." "Marauders here?" Pincus said with alarm. "They seen there's nothing there for them, child, nothing." As soon as she left, Pincus sank to my bedside. "Sheldon, boy," he whispered, "as soon as you heal up, we got to get away from here. We're putting Momo Bay in great danger by being here. If they come and find that she's been holding troopers," then his voice trailed off, "we got to get back to our outfits if we can find them." "You mean back to the war?" I asked. I must have gone pale as he went on to say, "It's the only way, ain't it?" Then he looked at me. "Sheldon, you all right?" "You look bothered," he says, he eased me back. "You can call me Say," I said. "Everybody in my family calls me Say, not Sheldon. I expect you're my family now." "Near enough, Say, near enough," he says. He chucked the blanket under my feet. "You can call me Pink," he said softly as he smiled. For the next week, Momo Bay fed us both up real good. Raw milk and cornbread never tasted so good in all my born days. It was the first time in months my victuals didn't have any mealyworms in it. She saw to it that I tried to walk a little every day. "So's that mean-looking leg don't go stiff on you and cripple up," she'd say. This place, it wasn't that much different from our farmhouse no high. More poor maybe, but it smelled the same, like pine boards and good cooking. A mess of beans with salt pork, corned beans, cornbread, greens, and onions. When we slept, she sat near us, stoked the fire, and watched over us. Never thought I'd feel safe enough to sleep deep again. "My mother and Kalo, my father, jumped a broom on this very spot," Pink said as he walked me on my first day outdoors. "And that there was the master's house, Master Ali," Pink spoke quietly as he helped me along. "How come you have his last name?" I asked. "Boy, when you're owned, you ain't got no name of your own. Even Kalo had to take that name." As we rested under the willow tree, Pink asked me about my family back home. "Got one brother still at home to help run the place for Pa," I answered. "What was your outfit again?" Pink asked. He'd asked me that before. "Ohio 24th. I carried the staff. Weren't supposed to carry a gun, but then so many died, even us boys had to carry after so many were slaughtered like hogs. Least you got to carry. In the 48th, we couldn't have guns at first. We fought with sticks and hammers and sledges. Can you imagine not trusting us with our own fight?" I couldn't imagine such a thing. "Then when did they finally give us and when they finally did give us muskets, they were from the Mexican-American War. Those muskets jammed and misfired." "Well, then how in God's name can you want to go back?" I asked. "Because it's my fight, Say. Ain't it yours too? If we don't fight, who will?" I had no answer for him, but God forgive me, I didn't ever want to go back to it. After a few more days, I could walk a little steadier, but still needed help. Pink took me out by the big house and walked me through it. Wasn't much left of it, really. It was mostly burned out. "Master Ali had a library full of books right here," he said. "He taught me how to read, even though it was against the law. He must have been a good man," I said. "More bad than good, Say. Sometimes I think he just liked being read to. There was this book of poetry, Say, that was this thick. Every night I'd read it out loud to him from that book. I blessed this house because of all those beautiful books, but I cursed it too for what it stood for." We walked a bit further. To be born a slave was a heap of trouble, Say, but after Ali taught me to read, even though he owned my person, I knew that nobody ever could really own me. "You feel hot, Pink," I said. "Lord, I think you as sick as me. Let me fetch you back to the house. I'll be just fine, boy. Just a little tired, that's all. I'll be ready to fight, though. I'll be ready to fight." That night after we ate, Momo Bay came back to the table with a worn old Bible. She was so happy. My heart ached at the thought of telling her we'd be leaving soon. "Master Ali showed him how paper talks. Show him, Pink," she said. He took out a pair of spectacles from his pocket and opened the Bible to the Psalms of David and started to read. His voice was steady and had such wonder. Just hearing them words made pictures come into my head. "I sure do wish I could read," I announced to them without thinking. When Pink saw I was ashamed, he took my hand. "I'll teach you, Say, some one day. I'll teach you." I could feel my face flushing up. Then I spoke up. "I've done something important," I announced. "Of course you have, child. Of course you have," his mother said. "I touched Mr. Lincoln's hand. It was near Washington. We were quartered there just before Bull Run. The president himself was shaking everyone's hands, and I just put my hand right out." "And he took it?" Pink asked. "Yep, he took it," I answered. "Now there's a sign, ain't it?" he said, smiling broadly. "Touch my hand, Pink. Now you can say you touched the hand that shook the hand of Abraham Lincoln." "Next best thing to touching him," Momo Bay said in wonder. Most of the next day, Pink was studying an old map. Marauders don't fan out further than 30 miles or so from their camps. If they come here, then their units must be that close. We got to get south of the river. See here, say? That's where my troops are headed. We can meet up with them about here, I figure. Meet up with who? You ain't leaving, his mother's voice called as she came up upon us. Now, my mother, you know we couldn't stay here. You had to know that, he said as he tried to calm her. No, no, my babies, my dear babies, she cried. She was inconsolable for a time. Then she just sat and feared as she listened. Mother, this war has got to be won. This sickness that has taken this land will never stop. Pink always called slavery the sickness when we talked. We have to go. He knelt at her feet. By the look coming in her eyes, I know she'd known this day was coming. I could feel my breathing catch. My chest was heavy, my hands were sweating, I felt sick at my stomach. I knew that I had to tell Pink something, I just didn't know how. That night I couldn't sleep. What's wrong, child? Momo Bay said from her chair. I don't want to go back, I blurted out. I know, child, she said. Of course you don't. You don't understand. I took up and run for my unit. I was hit when I was running. I sobbed so hard my ribs hurt. I'm a coward and a deserter. She looked at the fire and said nothing for the longest time. Then her voice covered my cries. You ain't nothing of the kind. You a child. A child, of course you're scared. Ain't nobody that ain't. I'm not brave like Pink. I'm not brave. Child, being brave don't mean you ain't afeared. Don't you know that? I don't want to die. These things worse than death, child, but you got nothing to fear. You are here now, and I'm hugging you up. You're going to be an old man someday. When it is your time, the sweet Lord will send a hummingbird to fly your soul to heaven. Now, you ain't afraid of hummingbirds, are you? Her words brought me to sweet sleep. That night I dreamt of hummingbirds and green pastures full of sunlight and wild flowers. The next morning we mustered to leave. We packed cornbread, salt pork, and dry beans. I would have done just about anything to stay, but my place was to go with Pink. I owed him that. Just as we were making the last sweep of the place, making sure there were no signs of us ever being there, we heard wild screams and shrieks coming from the woods. Marauders, Pink says. He grabbed a piece of wood for a club. Momo Bay took it from him. Get in that root cellar. They ain't got no truck with an old dark woman. You get to that cellar, you hear? We didn't like it, but she pushed us in. Hurry before they hear. She lifted the root cellar door and shoved us in. Don't come out until I tell you. We heard the porch steps creak as she ran from the cabin. She's drawing them off, Pink whispered. When the marauders came in, my heart was a pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it up there out above us. There was a terrible commotion as they ransacked, looking for food. Then there was silence. A single shot echoed through the trees outside. They let out a war whoop as they thundered off. We waited for a sign from Momo Bay, but it didn't come. Finally, we climbed out and ran outside, only to see Momo Bay lying just beyond the porch. We put you in our way by staying here, Pink cried as he rocked her in his arms. Her eyes were looking in a faraway place that he closed in. Your son loves you, Momo Bay. Your son loves you, he sobbed as he kissed her. We both held our hands so there was no more warmth in it. After we buried her under the willow tree, we set out. Pink figured they were 3 days' walk from Union troops. He watched the movement of the sun. Her words still rang in my heart. Her words about being brave. My steps were as sure now as they'd ever been since the war started. We walked in the open as clear as a country stroll until the morning of the second day. Then we knew we were being followed. Take these, Pink says. He took his spectacles from his pocket. If they catch me with them, we'll be trouble for sure. When they caught up with us, one yelled at me. Where you going with that darky, boy? I was afraid to answer because of my northern accent. It would, dead sure, give us away. Boy, what outfit you part of? Their leader barked. I couldn't answer. You Union boy? One year as he pulled my uniform from my knapsack. No, I ain't no Yankee. I got that from a dead one, I sputtered, trying to convince him. That's when we were grabbed. My words had given us away. We were prisoners of the Confederate Army. We were held up in a barn that night. Pink shivered with fear. I held him as he had done for me. Shivered with fever. The next morning we were thrown into a boxcar. We rode for what seemed 2 days, stopping many times. When the door slid open, the daylight was blinding. We were loaded into a buckboard and taken through town. The townsfolk looked hard at us. All they had left for us was mean looks and a heap of hate. We jarred to a stop in front of the gates that marked the entrance to a stockade. It says Andersonville, Pink whispered. My heart stopped. I'd heard of this place. It was one of the worst of the Confederate camps. When we were pulled from the buckboard, we fell hard to the ground. No, no, I begged as they pulled us both along. Because of his fever, Pink stumbled and fell. They dragged him along with such meanness. He did not protest until they forced us in different directions. Then he reached for me and said, let me touch the hand that touched Mr. Lincoln, say, just one last time. I watched tears fill his eyes, and he cleaved my hand to his until they wrenched us apart. They smote him and dragged him away from me. He looked back at me and tried to say something more, but they crossed his back with knotted hemp and pushed him along. This picture here is it shows a picture of the two hands. And I think it's one of the more striking illustrations in the book. And then at the end of it, Sheldon Russell Curtis was released from Andersonville prison some months later, weighing no more than 78 pounds. Andersonville was built to hold only 10,000 prisoners, but by the end of the war it held 33,000 soldiers. There was no fresh water, no shelter, no food. 13,000 men and boys died of starvation and dysentery. Sheldon Curtis returned to his home and recovered. He settled in Berlin Township in Saranac, Michigan. He married Abigail and Bernard and fathered seven children. He became a grandfather and a great-grandfather during his long lifetime. He died a very old man in 1924. Pincus Ali never returned home. For him, there was to be no wife, no children, no grandchildren to remember him.